our next speaker, Eileen Furlong, who is head of Genome Biology Unit at EMBL in Heidelberg, senior scientist and a member of the EMBL Directorate. And while her research focuses on genome regulation, she's joining us today to share how the EMBL is changing their approaches to issues of equality, diversity, and inclusion.
Great. Thank you, Tracy, and I hope you can hear me, everybody. Some nods there, yes. So thank you very much, Tracy, for the lovely introduction. And yes, so I'm a scientist at EMBL. EMBL is one of the partners of the life science across the globe. And just for people that may not know what EMBL is, it's the European Molecular Biology Laboratory. So it's an intergovernmental institute. We actually have departments in 5 different countries. We have 6 different departments. The main one is located in Heidelberg in Germany, which is where I'm sitting now. But I'm going to come back to this complexity actually for EDI, for having an intergovernmental institute. And I'm happy to tell you today a little bit about what's new at EMBL in terms of gender policies. This is, of course, a moving target, I think, for all of us. And actually, it's great to come after Alex's talk, which was actually fantastic to hear a sociologist's view of this, and also to stress the importance of data. We're scientists, so we're very analytical at the EMBL as in other institutes. So data is key here. And I'm going to get to this a little bit, but it's a bit difficult to get this data in an intergovernmental institute. But in order to do that, it's absolutely essential to create our policies. We recently did a survey on EDI, asking people, this was a voluntary survey at EMBL, asking people about different characteristics. This gave us both quantitative and qualitative data. And then we could use that information to generate our first gender equality plan at EMBL using the quantitative data. But this is an ongoing effort for data collection, and I will get back to our plans on that. So just to say, so in terms of what's new at EMBL, so before, and that's probably why I'm here, our previous, let's say, old structure, governance structure at EMBL was shaped a bit like this. We're mainly, as I said, scientists. We had an EDI committee. It was chaired by different scientists. This is like a head of department. We call them units here. So I was chair of the last one. We typically had group leader. These are principal PI, representatives from all sites, head of HR, representatives, postdocs, PhD students, etc. And at that point, we had 50% EDI officer located at 2 sites. So, and then we had a number of working groups that fed into this committee. So you can see that actually everything kind of went up. And at some point I felt like also, which I was actually, the bottleneck here, because between doing this, running my own research group and running a research department, it was a lot. But apart from that, we started off our journey here really on actually, this was 10 years ago, on thinking more about gender balance, and it was actually called the Gender Balance Committee. And there we were thinking in a very binary way, male, female, etc. This, of course, now we take a much more intersectional approach and a much more non-binary approach. And I think this also required the recruitment, in my opinion, of professionals really trained in this, which most of us here were not. We were trained as scientists. So with that, we took a step back. I discussed this with lots of other institutes, with a number of different people, and came up with a new strategy or a new structure for EMBL, which we started actually deep in the middle of the whole pandemic. And that was to start a dedicated equality, diversity, inclusion team. This is headed by Roshni. Alice is an EDI officer, and Lucia is now on maternity leave, which we will have a replacement soon. But this is a dedicated team of professionals which liaise with an EDI forum, which has representatives of all characteristics. And this is really I would say, the idea, that sort of bouncing pad within the organization. So this is where ideas come from. Those ideas will percolate, they'll brainstorm, this comes to the EDI team, and then this goes to a governing body, which helps the EDI team to make strategic decisions about which things should we go after, what can we do, etc. And this reports into our CCO, which, because as we thought it was important to be separated a little bit from HR. So that's our current structure, and I'm super happy to have this. So let's go now back to what have we been doing since then. So this has all been occurring since actually 2020, so it's very new, hot off the press. So with this new structure, we've been then coming up with a new EDI strategy plan for EMBL. This is based on this quantitative data that we got from our EDI survey. So this was an internal perspective of what kind of diversity do we have? How well are we doing? We're not doing very well actually on some aspects. We can do a lot better. And from that EDI strategy, we have 4 strategic axes in there. And I just want to run through what they are. So first one, of course, is the people. Next one is our processes, our culture, and our partnerships. So for the people, from this, I mean, we have different focus areas here, really to identify opportunities to support inclusion in our recruitments and our processes. So this is kind of with both HR, but also with the leaders that are recruiting. High profile action targeting of underrepresented groups. We have been doing this for quite some time. We don't have quotas. We had a lot of discussions about quotas, and perhaps we'll get into that a bit later in the discussion, but we decided not to go with quotas. This was, for example, for female group leaders, when PIs, when I started here, we had about 10 or 12%, so not doing very well. To increase that over the years, we have done that by talking to the heads of departments, well, of which I am one, but also of the other departments. And rather than having strict quotas, we've just been increasing awareness. And I have to say, this has resulted in the last, we've monitored this now for the last 6 years. We are up to about 45% of female recruitments. So I'm very happy with that. Of course, this will take longer time for the whole body of PIs to change over, because it takes time for people to retire, but I think we're on the right path. Focus areas, we want this to ensure that the EDI principles are built into all of our internal processes and systems. So this is lots of discussions with our internal policies, with our human resources, also with internal training that has EDI in there. So all new PIs that come to EMBL to start a lab, for example, have a leadership course which is mandatory and has within there an EDI component. The next one is culture. This is the culture at the Institute. So we want to, EMBL, because we're intergovernmental, we like to be a role model for doing excellent research, for doing excellent training. That's one of our missions. Technology development is another mission, but we'd also like to have to be a model actually for inclusive leadership as another sort of goal that I would like to see there. And finally, our partnerships. We're trying to EMBL, one of the purposes of EMBL, because we are intergovernmental, is to train scientists at all levels and kind of let those scientists go back to their member states highly trained, including the PIs. And here you can imagine, if we have people going back out with this inclusive mindset and with this inclusive training, this will also percolate through. This would be the dream on a much wider area. So let's just go back to thinking internally. One of the problems, and this Alex very nicely showed, is that women tend to drop out of science at different parts of the career. One from our own internal survey that we've done is one of the big dropouts is at that gap between postdoc to even apply for a leadership position in science, a PI position. So at EMBL, we typically have roughly 60% female people that identify with being female PhD students. It's maybe 50-50 at the postdoc level, but then at the people applying for leadership, let's say professorship positions that say that they even want to, it goes way down. And this is also the case in the other direction. Oftentimes our own positions that we are advertising for a PI position, we might only get about 25% of the applicants that are females. So the question is, why is this and what can we do to help this? So for our outgoing women in science, our postdocs, we have generated a mentorship program. We have internal mentorship, but this is a specific mentorship program for women postdocs at EMBL called LEAP, which stands for Leadership and Excellence for Aspiring Postdocs. I always tell the postdocs, take a leap for your career. We've had the first cohort of people coming through. It's very new, so we have to see, what is the outcome of the career of these postdocs compared to other postdocs. But the main objectives here is to support the postdocs in their leadership aspirations. Oftentimes, in my experience, and also I'll speak personally as well, it's a confidence issue is one thing. The components, there's 4 key dimensions to this. One is leadership training, mentorship. A very important part of this is one-to-one coaching. And the other part of this is actually the peer network amongst the cohort themselves. So this is a group of postdocs, which are all, actually we advertise this. We're not kind of trying to get the postdocs that say, yes, I want to be a professor, I'm going to apply, and that's absolutely fantastic. And we have other mentorships for people like that of how to give a good talk, how to do a proposal, etc. We're actually aiming for the cohort of postdocs that are sitting on the fence saying, I don't really know if I'm good enough, I don't know if I should do this. Those are the people, and if any of you guys are listening out there, those are the people that we want to get. Those are the people who often can do it. You just need a little bit more confidence. You just need to think about it a little bit more. We try to get people in their 2nd and 3rd year of their postdoc to already start building up the skills that they need. So the outcome of this so far is very positive. We've had several of our participants have found leadership positions at the end of the program. As I said, it's a little bit early yet, but we're going to keep monitoring this. And we've already started the sort of LEAP 2, which the first cohort of postdocs has now applied and been selected. And here, the goal is still the same, to support women postdocs in developing leadership skills, but we have expanded this a little bit by also providing toolkits to enable those participants also to become agents of change as regards to equality, diversity, and inclusion. And this is what I was mentioning before. One of the key missions of EMBL is sort of exporting trained scientists, including group leaders, PIs, at all levels. And if we can equip them to become agents of change, this then percolates out. We've also revised the scope to focus on intersectionality for all participants to attract women from diverse backgrounds. So that's just one sort of a nice example of one of the activities that we're doing. To get back to one of the key points that Alex very nicely made with his examples is the importance of data in terms of EDIs to make your policies. As I said, we've had our first survey, but the uptake of that survey wasn't as high as we would like. We need more data. And this is actually a challenge at EMBL. So we collect gender and age if people want to give that information, date of birth, when people start. So this happens, when people have their contracts. I mean, they don't have to, they can say they prefer, we have kind of 4 choices there, non-binary and also prefer not to say. But we do have an issue at EMBL because EMBL is an intergovernmental institute. So let's just go back to this. So EDI strategy includes plan to expand our EDI data collection, including ethnicity, sexuality, religion, belief, disability, amongst other EDI items. Because we're an intergovernmental institute, several of our member states have issues with this. So for example, ethnicity in Germany, you cannot ask that question, it's against the law. In France, you cannot ask about sexuality. So there's some, as far as I know, but there's some, let's say, things that we have to be very careful of, but we are trying to encourage all of our staff at EMBL, this is voluntary, that we would get this information and that they would all see it's completely confidential. It's actually handled by an external company, that they would see the value of us having this information. I think Alex gave a very nice example of that in this quote from that brilliant feminist book, which was also saying that in this case, you know, we want this data not for oppression, but we want this data to try to see how well are we doing and what can we do better. And so this is what we're trying to now, it comes to a culture change to try to discuss this with amongst the scientists, amongst the whole cohort of people within our institute, so that people see the value of doing this and the value of volunteering to do this. Okay, actually, this is just what I've mentioned here. But one of the opportunities for change here, because we are an intergovernmental institute, we're also in discussion with the Commission and with different, our Director General, Edith Third, is often in discussions also with lots of politicians within the different countries. I think the EU itself have been having a roundtable on equality data, and they realize themselves that they need better EDI data to be collected in the member states. So I think this is actually something that we're hoping will change, maybe from the top down, like the big top down, maybe within Europe, but also from the bottom up by changing the culture a little bit and discussing this and openly discussing, you know, why it would be useful to volunteer to give this information. Okay, and lastly, to just, you know, that's discussing having that data to create policies a little bit from the top down, but we also want to flip the narrative a little bit. EMBL is aware that initiatives alone, such as LEAP, are not enough for long-term change. We're hoping, as we said, we will have EDI sort of ambassadors equipped when they leave EMBL, but we also need to create an inclusive culture throughout EMBL and throughout the leadership. And this is actually, I was very happy to see that, Alex, on your slide of the 3 pillars with research and data, and the last one being leadership. And so this is actually what we're focusing on now in EMBL, is how can we train leadership and how can we interact with leadership, heads of departments like myself, on the fundamentals of EDI, and also with being able to use EDI to make a better research group, to make a better research department, to make a better research institute. And here our objectives is you can make leaders aware of their biases, the opportunities that a good management of diversity opens up for better science, enhance decision-making through diverse intelligence, create a shared understanding and joint ownership actually of inclusive leadership practices. And so here we're doing this in 2 ways, bottom up, to co-create and design a process, design training for this, but also top down. And so here we are starting to try to develop a training program, and this is sort of hasn't started yet. We're starting to think and trying to develop the training program for upper leadership, which can also be different from people at different stages of the career, if you're a PhD student or a postdoc. So here we also need this for, you know, tenured heads of departments. So this is something that we're working actively on now and that we will roll out in the future. And I think this is something that personally I feel is very important. Yes, so this will include having, apart from that, tailored to different groups at EMBL, we will also have workshops for all of EMBL, and this will help with the culture so that we're all on the same page with what do we mean by EDI. It's not just good enough to have diversity if you don't have inclusion. Some people, you know, we need to really kind of discuss this with people so that they understand the difference, that they themselves can take responsibility for this, and we can hold ourselves and hold each other into account and have a very open discussion about this. And with that, before I stop, I just want to thank mainly Roshni, who's the head of our new EDI team, who's doing an absolutely amazing job, as well as Alice, who's an EDI officer in Roshni's team, both of which have helped me to put this presentation together. And as I said, they're doing a fantastic team, and I'm so glad that they're at EMBL. And thank you very much.